Great. And the next thing is it possible for me to see you, or are you in a situation where I can't see you?
I'm driving, so
Oh, you're driving. Okay, then you keep driving.
Yeah.
All right,
I'll be stationary probably in about 10-15 minutes.
Great.
So if that helps.
Well, you focus on your driving, and if anything comes up, that's where your priority needs to be, obviously. Okay, so can we just start with, because how much time do we have?
I have until 4:30 or so, 30 minutes.
Okay, great. Then let's move relatively quickly then. So when is your campaign really begin, or has it already begun?
I have the 2024 election cycle, which will involve, lots of public messaging. And then secondly, the gubernatorial campaign. Right now, the phase we are in is sort of the pregame fundraising, primarily for the PAC as well as the candidate committee. And then I'll formally announce in January of 2025 and begin the kind of signature collection and just all the other kind of candidacy related things at that time.
Okay, all right. Well, then we've got plenty of times to work on your gubernatorial pitch, as it were. That's why I focus on everything in the pitch. Do you want to work on that now, or is there something else that you'd like to work on that I can help with that is more pressing?
I think I'd just love to figure out, your thoughts on working together and what that would look like. And what, sort of our needs are both on the official side and the political side. Because as I told Jenna, we've never really had help on messaging or framing or taking something very complex and delivering it very succinctly. And so I think, that's the broad strokes of what my needs are. Certainly, I think, the specificity of a gubernatorial pitch as well would be great to start workshopping. Because I've got a lot of ideas, but not a lot of succinctness and not a lot of clarity even on what the environment's going to be like in 25 and 26, which of course will impact it. But certainly that doesn't preclude us from developing a pitch now. I do have a meeting with donors in DC on October 25th, in which case I will be presented as a future gubernatorial candidate. So in terms of specificity, I think working with you to develop something for that is a tighter pitch as to what a gubernatorial race in Michigan is going to look like and our central messaging is going to be might be helpful.
All right, well then, to preserve it, let me cover three subjects as quickly as possible. One is just so you understand about my background. Second of all, so that you understand like what my generalized approach is. And the third is just in terms of, what I offer and, what I do for free and what I do for pay and stuff, just so you have an understanding. Make sense?
Great. Yeah.
Okay, so just to start off with me, I have a pretty rarefied situation here where, and I've got a lot of experience in Hollywood and a lot of experience in Washington. So I started off a drama major in college, and then my parents, doctor and a lawyer combination, bribed me to go to law school. And so I went to law school, and where Elizabeth Warren was one of my professors. And so I actually
she was one of mine at Harvard.
No, I went to Penn. She was at Penn before Harvard.
Oh, interesting. Got it.
And so, but she got me excited in civil rights, even though she was a bankruptcy professor at my law school. She probably taught the same at Harvard, but she might have expanded to other things. But she taught me bankruptcy, and she actually was able to see the civil rights in bankruptcy. And that's what got me excited. So I became a civil rights lawyer briefly, and then I went down to Washington and I became chief counsel first to Joe Lieberman, then John Kerry, and then Ted Kennedy and Paul Wellstone. I was also all these guys' speechwriter. And then Wellstone was killed in a plane crash, and I couldn't keep working in politics, even for Ted. And so I bought a sailboat, sold all my possessions, sailed halfway around the world, landed in Los Angeles, and was immediately, even after all my parents' discouragement, immediately represented by CAA and staffed on a TV show starring Viola Davis within 3 months of my arriving in Los Angeles.
Oh, so that must have been the murder one.
What'd you say?
Right? Was it what, this was when, that was probably when I was a dean at a law school, and it was about murder. What was the TV show? It was, the
It
Viola
was,
Davis TV show you mentioned?
yeah, it was called Century City. It was about a law firm 25 years in the future.
Oh,
It wasn't How to Get
oh,
Away
okay,
with
so it
Murder.
wasn't, oh, okay, got it. All right.
Yeah.
Well, sorry about
This
that.
was before
Okay,
she
got
was
it.
an established name. She hadn't won an Oscar yet. So I've written for 5 major shows. I've been nominated for, I got Kira Sedgwick nominated for her first Emmy. And and then I've been selling TV shows, and I've sold 12 of my own, and I just sold my first feature. And so my writing career is going very well. Thank you. But politically, John Kerry ran for president. I was involved in that. Elizabeth ran. Bernie Sanders ran. I've also written for de Blasio, Eric Garcetti, Pete Buttigieg. I've written at this point now for most of the top Democrats. I've worked with Pelosi, and I've been to Washington, D.C., and I've given speeches to the entire Democratic caucus in the Senate and in the House, and to all press secretaries on both sides of the both houses, at least the Democrats. And so a lot of this I've done for pay, some of it I've done for free. I just was working for, I worked on a paid position for the Biden campaign, but only because everybody else had lost who I'd already worked for. And I worked for Biden, and I'm going to be working probably for this upcoming campaign as well. And what I guess probably my specialty is the stump. And that's one thing that I really work on very well. And I help with fundraising asks, and I help with overall message. I've done debate prep for 2 presidential candidates and a lot of congressional candidates. And at this point right now, my active clients are Mary Gay Scanlon in the House of Representatives, Deborah Haaland, the Biden administration itself, Josh Green, who's governor of Hawaii. And that's the overall spiel. In terms of what I do, what I would probably do is really ask you some deep questions about, whatever it is your ask is, whether it's money for this or position for that, and just, give you feedback on that. There's a lot that I can really just do for free because, like, for example, last week, when our mutual friend, the Secretary of State of Maine, came by the house, I didn't even think to ask her for money. But in about 20 minutes to a half hour, I gave her an entire platform that she's plans on using to run for governor. So, and it's not that hard for me to do. It's something I really love doing. If it's sort of an ongoing role, and if I'm looking at materials, and if I'm working with you over time, which I'd love to do, then there probably would be some compensation I would ask for. But I'm happy to help. Just, I'm just happy to help. I want Democrats to be elected, and I want great people to be elected. And I tend to particularly like working for female clients, in part because, my first client was the National Organization for Women, and all the TV shows that I've written for that have, been so well respected had female leads. So anyway, that's my spiel.
It's first of all, I thank you for working for Paul Wellstone. I'm one of the people who, consider him the hero of our work. And, we all, along with Bobby Kennedy, I think, feel a responsibility to continue doing what he would have done had he been alive today. And secondly, the Kerry campaign was that's why your name sounds so familiar, because I was central in the Kerry world in '96 in the Senate race. And then I think that was his last Senate race. Maybe he ran in 2002, I guess. But in 2004, and worked on the campaign there. So,
wow.
But I was, in 2004, I was the assistant field director with John Norris. But I was always just in these meetings with all the central figures taking notes in the background. So I'm sure we were in meetings together, at the presidential, if not in the Senate campaign. So in any event, I feel like our backgrounds very similarly align. I told a little bit of my story. I worked at the Southern Poverty Law Center, and went to law school to become a civil rights attorney. And out of that really grew this desire to serve politically as a continuation of that work, really inspired by the fact that it was LBJ adopting the language of the civil rights movement in 65 that led to the passage of the Voting Rights Act. And so in trying to figure out my place in the civil rights movement of today, really came to find my place in political leadership, given my skill set and what I enjoy doing. But it's all part of the same work, right? And just we all play different roles in it. And so I always appreciate and have really assembled teams around folks who are mission driven in that regard, because I do think, especially now with our increasingly diverse electorate, our mission for the next 10 to 20 years as leaders or as work in this space is to help our democracy become a true multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy. And so that's the exciting work that I want to be a part of. How do we, in this moment, evolve into that, become like a vibrant, multiracial, multi-ethnic governing democracy? And what role can I play in that? And then there's sort of the more specific issue of why I want to run for governor in Michigan, but trying to figure out how to align my personal mission on the civil rights standpoint with my political message is, something I feel like we could work really well together on. And so I'd love to explore something where, we're working together, sporadically as needed over the next year or so, here and there as you feel appropriate. And then, have you come on board the campaign if time allows for your own schedule.
That sounds great. Really, I'm sure we'll find a good routine. Assuming that I'm helpful, and I think I can be, and I think I will. First of all, and I said this to Shenna as well, the best way to win me over completely and make me like a puppy dog following around for life is to talk about Paul Wellstone. Because he changed my life, and there isn't a day that goes by that I'm not aware of him and thinking about him and missing him. So thanks for remembering him and for knowing him. That means a lot to me. Did I lose you?
But
yeah, I'm actually glad to be back looking at you, because it's easier to really connect. We've gotten to that point right now where phone can be a little bit impersonal, and seeing someone's face. And it's a shame because then we get tied to our devices more.
Yeah.
But it's nice to see you.
Yeah.
Where you lost me, I was just saying that it really means a lot to me that you know Wellstone and that you care about Wellstone. And that's the way to my heart. I'll follow you. I'll follow almost any round like a puppy dog if they say good things about Paul, because he was the person who meant the most to me in the whole political experience that I've had. And I miss him every single day.
That's wonderful. I think it gives me, I still remember quite vividly. I was in law school when I learned about the plane going down, and I still remember the moment. That was, I remember that was when the wind got knocked out of me for that particular cycle. I think it was in 2002, 2003, going into 2004, and then going to work for Kerry in 2004, and just all of that. But it was, that's the why, right? To continue his legacy and his work. And and that's also the great honor, right? Like the great question for all of us, how could we carry on his torch? And so knowing your connection to him as well makes me feel like, well, we will understand each other a great deal, and work together well. And that, which is also my biggest struggle, is always finding someone who understands my why and knows my voice, because I'm not a politician. I am a civil rights advocate trying to find my place in this work today. You
froze for a second. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Am I frozen for you too? Because I can see me moving. You can probably see yourself moving. Oh, there you are. You're back.
Okay.
So are you, may I call you Jocelyn?
Sure. Yes, of course.
All right, well, listen, so diving in a little bit, because I know we've only got another 11 minutes. I have not been following you that closely until I met you. Let me tell you, give me my immediate analysis, my, opinion just from not having met you at all. You're brilliant. That comes off right away. You're very clear with your words. You're calculating, I think in a good way, but what I would encourage you to do and what I'd like to work on is for people not necessarily to see the wheel spinning as much. That's a problem with somebody who's got a super great left brain. One of the things I do when I work with politicians is I teach them to bifurcate the hemispheres of the brain, to learn how to use their right brain a little bit more and their left brain a little bit less, because the left brain can shut down the really creative, heartfelt, emotional stuff. Because although it's brilliant with structure and it's brilliant with word choice and it's brilliant with, sometimes punchiness, it can also be an editor, and it can sort of shut down people's more full expression. And it's very hard. I mean, you need to have a good left brain because you don't want the right brain to run away with you. You don't want to lose your cool, and you don't want to go off on tangents and the like. And also in this day and age when there's so much animosity, you want to be guarded on some level about what you say. But you've got such a great left brain that I don't think I'm worried about whether your left brain is going to save your ass. What I would want to do is bring out more of the right brain, bring out more of the emotions, shorten some of your answers, and give you just and teach, like you're a statewide politician who has managed to make a low profile position into a high profile position and have a national impact. So you are a rising star, and I don't even know that. I haven't even Googled you, but I can already tell this is a rising star. And I think people feel that way when they meet you and they encounter you. I think that a little bit more game playing in a healthy way, like a little bit more like, just playing to people's emotions, will just give you another tool in your shed that you don't always have to use, but you'll have it in your back pocket. And forgive me, you may already have it. I just wasn't sure that I saw that one last Thursday night. Last Thursday night, I saw personable, smart, principled, talented, strong. I didn't necessarily feel the Wellstone heart. You know what I mean? I didn't necessarily feel that. And my guess is that I'm positive it's there. And maybe it was late at night, or maybe it wasn't the right crowd for that. Maybe you played differently to different crowds. But that's something I would probably just at first blush want to work on a little bit.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And I agree. I'm a professor. That's my background, right? I'm a daughter of teachers. I'm a professor by training. So that's the right analysis. I've got the heart when I need to access it, but I don't always understand when I need to access it.
Yeah, and in some ways, it's just giving you another tool. If you really work on it, you'll also see that there's a really great way to manipulate people with it. Because the crowd plays to it, and more and more, especially when you go on TV, and especially when you're going to the entire state. It's such a huge state, and you're asking for a vote for a different purpose. You're going to need a little bit more of it, because when you're running to be Secretary of State, when you're getting that position, people want a wonk. They want a wonk. They want a professor. But if it's governor, they want someone they can kick back with, have a beer with. They want someone who's going to cry tears with them. They want somebody who's going to be as pissed off as they are about the same things, And I worked on this with Shenna too. It's interesting. We might be able to, for some of the things, do a little bit of combined sessions, because she's so fucking good. But she, I think, she isn't quite as commanding of the spotlight that you are, which is great. I think the fact is, you want the ball. You want someone to throw you the ball, and that's really important when you're talking statewide. And also, of course, you're talking about a statewide position that is a launching pad for president. It just is. And that's the way you want people to perceive it. Whether you have an interest in being president or not, you want people to see you in that light.
Yep.
So one of the things that people are gauging is, all right, is she ready for her close-up? And And ready for the close-up basically means, can she play that little game? Can she play the emotion game? You know, is she gonna work up a crowd? Is she gonna know how to stir up the emotions? And I'm positive that you're capable of it, and you've probably already done it many times. I want to help you refine that, so that you've got, so that is in your back pocket, and you can just pull it out whenever you want.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. I love that. And I need it. I mean, that's one of the vulnerabilities that I need to shore up, and certainly, have a, there we go. I think I have it in the reserves, but I don't know how to use it.
Great. Well, we'll work on that. And that's what I've been teaching Democrats to do for you know, the last 10 years specifically. And part of it is what I've learned in Hollywood. You know, what I've learned by writing, by being a speechwriter who then had to write, you know, for Law and Order. And really had to write for Mariska Hargitay and Holly Hunter. Holly Hunter was a star of one of the shows that I wrote for. How do I write for her? Because she doesn't want to, she's not going to give you a legal analysis. You know, she's, you know, so anyway, that's
Went to evoke the emotion.
Yeah. And that's what we need to do. And part of it is, it's not your fault and it's not the Democratic Party's fault, right? The problem with us as presenters is that we're right. When you're right, you want to argue the facts. When you're wrong, you have to argue the emotions. So the Republicans have become much better at arguing emotions than us because they have no choice. Now, the most power position is when you've got the facts and you've got the emotions. We're the only ones that can do that because we're the only ones that have the facts. So that's where I'd love to work with.
Yeah, that's really powerful and well needed, and something that, especially going into 24, is I'm going to try to frame, as I try to do on Thursday, you know, try to frame the choice for the nation and the role we all have in defending our sacred vote in this moment and who we are as a country. I think I want to figure out how to tap into that for speeches, but also for all those media appearances as well, to be able to be a more compelling messenger for that.
And just a little exercise here, because we only got 4 minutes, but if you're trying to talk about the importance of the vote, like what would you just say? So I'm asking you a question here now. Why is it so important that people have, you know, that people are able to exercise the right to vote? What's your answer?
It depends on the audience. Or first, right? So is it women? I'm going to lean into everyday people are making decisions about your rights, your freedoms, your control over your own reproductive health. And you deserve to be at that table. You deserve to make sure you have a powerful voice at that table. And that's what protecting the vote is all about. If it's people of color, we'll go into civil rights. If it's young voters, same, but it's sort of like trying to, depends on who the audience is.
Okay, well, welcome to working with me, because here's how I would suggest it.
Yeah.
Jocelyn, why is the right to vote important to you?
Because it is the only power we have in a democracy. It's
but rather than the word we, I want the word I. Like, I really want to understand, and this, we may not have the time to do it, but I want to understand down deep, like, I want you to go to your own wound or your own fear or that time in your life when you were like, God damn, I'm glad I have the right to vote. What you sacrificed for the right to vote. Like, that's what I want to get to. I want to get to your emotional work in it. And I want the answer to be like, and this is the bad version, but like, you know, the reason for me personally, Jocelyn, I've had family members that died in the Holocaust. And Jews came to the United States on boatloads of Jews, and were sent away and had to go back to Germany, where they went right into the camps. So a vote for me isn't something theoretical. Vote for me is within my parents' lifetimes. You know, that's just an example. And that was just off the top of my head. But that's what I want for you. I want to know why the vote matters to Jocelyn. And when you get to that and the heart of that, and that, by the way, is an inquisitive process. It's a little bit of therapy too. I'd want to hear about your parents. I'd want to hear about, you know, whether you have children. I'd want to hear about, you do, right? You have a daughter. Like, And the standard answer, well, I want my daughter to be able to be raised, and that's not as emotional as in great storytelling. It's all about going to the biggest emotions you've got, whether it's when you were, and big emotions are sometimes are when you've cried really hard over something, when you've been really furious about something, when you've been really inspired by something, whatever it is, but it's a big emotion that you have. Because when you have that big emotional experience, then your audience has permission to have one too.
So I usually start my stump speech with, my parents were special education teachers, and from them, I'm going to say it in a sort of rote way, but without the emotion, and from them, I saw early on how important it is for everyone to have a seat at the table. Because if you don't have that seat at the table every day, decisions are going to be made that take away your power, your voice, your ability to have an education. And so that's sort of the entry point, in which I then talk about going to Selma and being in Selma, Alabama, and being inspired by the people who bled and fought and sacrificed so much so that the one person, one vote principle promise in our Constitution is a reality for everyone. And so that's why I decided to become a civil rights lawyer. And then the 2000 election happened. And we saw for the first time how a Secretary of State, Katherine Harris, didn't allow a full recount to happen, changing the course of American history. And so at that point, I began focusing on secretaries of state as the vehicle through which we can best protect the right to vote. And lo and behold, here we are 20 years later, seeing how we are on the front lines of protecting the voice and the vote of every citizen in this country.
That's terrific. And we can get even deeper.
Yeah.
I'll give you two examples quickly because I know you got to go. The one is about special ed, and these are just from my own life. So special ed, did you ever know Bobby Silverstein?
Yes.
Yeah. So Bobby was the disability counsel who to the Senate Labor Committee, who actually wrote the ADA and the first version of IDEA. And I mean, he was the special ed policy guy. When he left the Senate, retired, and went to go be a professor at Georgetown, he offered me his job. It was the greatest professional compliment that anyone had ever given me in my life. Because no one was more connected to his job than Bobby Silverstein. But I said no. And you want to know why I said no? It's because I had helped him write IDEA, and I had dealt with special ed parents. And if you ask a special ed parent, which is more important, your children's education or your life, they wouldn't know how to answer.
Yeah. Yep.
And so, like, when you talk about, this would be me speaking as you, my parents, day in, day out, dealt with some of the most emotional, challenging choices and issues and tensions imaginable. And they came home sometimes, and all their patients they had left at school, and we had tension, but I respected them anyway. Like, whatever, I could go into the story about it. And then you say, if the IDA wouldn't exist, if it wasn't for people who exercised their power to vote. And if you're going to talk about what happened in 2000, what I want you to do is go into what you actually saw. You saw in Texas, in Florida, you saw these people who had, these Black people who had been prevented from voting by roadblocks. And you saw these young white staffers who came down from the Republican side in order to create trouble and protest while these ballots are being counted. And you were like, oh my God, it's a zoo, and the zookeeper is a Secretary of State. And that's when I was like, something, it may not be glamorous, it may not be, prestigious. Secretary of State matters. Like that's, and I want you to transport. I want you to mention names and give me dates and give me stories and tell me how you felt in this moment. Like, that's what I want. I don't want it to be someone else's story. Like, oh, I met this woman and it was so, like, that's the typical Democratic freaking speech. This woman and she lost her job, and no, I want to know how you felt. Like I saw her and I felt awful. I gave her my shoes. I want to know how you felt.
That's really powerful and helpful to add color to all of that. Yeah. And yeah, I think I really, need to live in that space a little bit, because I can, like I was saying, I feel like I have that and I can access it, but I need someone to help me do that.
And I would just revise the word need just a little bit. You're going to succeed with or without me because you're fucking fantastic. But I think you'll have an easier time and a more effective time with these tools.
Yeah. And I'll feel better because it's more aligned with, because I want to connect with the audience and I want to move the audience. And I'm an academic. I'm not predisposed to being able to do that. I know how to give people information. I've always struggled with shifting from being a teacher to being a candidate. And my like resting state is being a teacher, an educator, right? I have to like train myself to be a candidate.
Well, just, you know, this is the exact experience I went through with Elizabeth Warren.
Huh. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Because she, by the way, I mean, the fights that we had, and because I helped her with her first stump speech for Senate, and then I helped her write her first DNC speech. And then the bubble around her got too tight. And all I ever did after that was sort of like, you know, little things here and there. But she, in the beginning, didn't want to talk about herself at all.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't talk about me. She was a professor. You talk about the case law. You talk about your client, but you don't talk about you. And she didn't know. She didn't. But I challenge you right now to hear a speech from Elizabeth Warren where she doesn't talk about herself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's so interesting to hear you say that, because in listening to her book, as I did, it was her, and I told her this last time I saw her, it was her stories about her kids in childcare and her husband. Like, that's what resonated. That's what made me also feel like I knew her, right? Or could trust her, or could like see her as like she cared. So I wanted like skill set.
That was the line that I gave Elizabeth. I said, Elizabeth, you are so passionate. No one is going to trust your passion unless they know where it comes from.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I would love to, as a next step, if you're okay with it, send you. So I write all my own speeches because I've never found anyone who could communicate as effectively. I don't know, could do it for me. Right. I just never. And so there's 3 speeches I wrote, one for the Brennan Center when I got their award, one for the Profile and Courage Award with the Kennedys that I got, and one with when I was honoring a civil rights judge who was my mentor. And all 3 same theme, but they all have a different audience, but they all try to get at what you're saying. They all had an emotional impact with the audience. But I would love for you is to that's sort of like my starting point. That's where I'm at, right? And so that'll also give you a sense of like, I'm sure you're going to read this and see all the ways they've come up short. And that kind of gives you a sense of like what my baseline is at this point and what I need help with, and kind of like getting to a better place. And so even like starting there and saying like, this is how, because I've used different iterations of these speeches other times where I've had to give speeches on the same subject or similar subjects. So I'd love to get a sense as you read it. I was like, it'll give you a sense of who I am, I think, because they all are intended to do that, but also like my best attempt at trying to be a right brain emotional speaker. And it'll give you a sense of how much more work I have to do to get there.
Well, listen, I love the self-deprecation. I love the self-effacement. It's all great, but let's be real here, Jocelyn. Your baseline is fucking fantastic.
Yeah, okay. But I'm not interested in hearing. I'm interested in what I can do to get better. Because
okay,
I know
that's great. Because the politicians that are hardest to work on, the hardest politician to work on is the one who doesn't think they need the help. And there's a lot of those. But the ones who I can do the most with are the ones who are aware of their strengths and want to work on their weaknesses. And, you know, you really sound perfect. You really sound like a wonderful person to work with.
Well, I'd love to, I mean, you tell me what you feel would be best. I know for me, I'd love to get your take on these sort of like basic stump speeches that I've already got in writing. And if you want to see the video of me delivering any of them, we have those too, I believe. At least for the Profile and Courage Award, is to kind of like give you a sense of where I'm at, and then maybe schedule an hour for us to like come together, and you can kind of critique and tell me, and that'll give you, I think, more like meat to work with in terms of where I need to get to, and then we can maybe sort of figure out, you know, some next steps from there, if that makes sense.
Sounds perfect.
Okay, so I'll send you those, and if you want a link, I at least will send you the link to JFK. And then I have some time next week if you want to set up like maybe next Thursday or Friday, an hour or however much time you think you need to kind of talk through them. But you can let me know.
And let me, I'll text you my email address.
Perfect. Okay, we'll go from there. Thank
Have
you,
a good
Roger.
day. It's really nice to talk with you.
Yeah, you too. I'm excited to work with you. Thank you so much for being willing and open to it.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks. Okay, bye.